If you will bear with me, I'll read through the preamble. So, all visitors must sign into the visitor book at the Kilncraig's reception. This includes council staff from other buildings. There is no planned fire evacuation drill or alarm test today. If the fire alarm is activated during your visit, you must exit the building immediately. The council officers will direct you to the nearest fire exit and will escort visitors to the building fire assembly point beside this silver man at the top of the Parliament Walk. Kilncraig staff should report to their floor's assembly point. You should remain at your assembly point unless directed to reoccupy the building and only re-enter once the fire marshal is advised it's safe to do so. Please do not attempt to leave the site by vehicle unless cleared to do so by the fire marshal, and ensure access routes are kept clear for emergency vehicles. Please note this is a public meeting and that members of the public may be in attendance. The meeting will be recorded by the clerk and published online for public viewing. The taking of photographs, including screenshots, audio or video recordings, are not permitted during meetings unless with the express permission of the chair. Can members attending virtually activate their cameras where possible to enable you to join by video, and could all attendees mute their microphones when not speaking? Please do not come in during items unless I invite you to do so. If members attending virtually wish to speak at any point, please indicate by clicking the raise your hand button. Members in the chamber should also raise their hand and I will bring you in at an appropriate time. If members have not been able to access all papers to the meeting, please indicate. Today we will hear each of the items set out in the agenda. I will invite the officer to present the paper and members will then have the opportunity to ask questions before we proceed to debate and decision. I'll now ask the clerk to take the roll call to confirm attendance at the meeting and would ask that members indicate they wish to declare an interest.
So to confirm, we have received apologies from Councillor Fairley, Councillor Forson and Councillor Keogh. We were expecting Councillor Balsillie and Councillor Harrison as substitutions. Don't believe we've received any apologies from them, but they may still attend.
Councillor Harrison is on his way back from Perth, expects to be a little late, but he should make the meeting. I don't know about the Councillor Balsillie.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have there any declarations of interest? Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the minutes of the last meeting. Can everyone sort of have a look through the minutes for accuracy? Page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10.
A minor typo,
Right.
on page 10, very bottom line. Sorry, it says 15 members remain present. I don't think that will be correct.
Oh no, that'll be 5, won't it? Absolutely, we can get that changed. Page 11, page 12, page 13, and page 14. Okay?
With that line. With that alteration.
With that alteration, yeah. Okay, we'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, Council Financial Performance 2024-25 as of September 2024, and that will be presented by Lindsay Sim, Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you. Good morning. This paper provides an update on the financial performance for the Council for the year ending 31st of March 25, based on actual spend for the second quarter to September. General Fund revenue is forecasting an overspend of 54,000 for the year, which is a favourable movement of 615,000 from previously reported. A summary of the position across directorates is provided in Appendix 1 to the paper, with full detail of spend by service area provided in Appendices 3 to 6. A summary of earmarked reserves is provided in Table 4.6 of the report, which shows opening committed reserves at the 1st of April 24 of 23,242,000, with 1.933 million drawn down as at September. The Clerk Manager element of the Health and Social Care Partnership is forecasting an overspend for the year of just over 6 million based on most recent information. This is a reduction of 378,000 since the last reported to committee. The General Fund Capital Programme is forecasting an underspend of 5.5 million across various projects, with 4.97 proposed to be carried forward. A summary of the forecast for asset plan is provided at section 6.3 of the report, and detail by project is provided in Appendix 8. In relation to savings, the Council is forecast to deliver 4.841 million of the approved 5.383 million, which equates to 90%. A further 250,000 is identified as at risk and will continue to be pursued during the year. Details of performance against individual savings are included in Appendix 2. I'm happy, along with colleagues, to answer any questions on the paper.
Thanks, Lindsay. Have any questions? Councillor Benny?
Yes, thanks. Oh. Thank you for that. The bit that I'm looking at is a social care partnership, HSCP. Is that a movable feast at 6 million, or is that now cast in stone? Is there going to be anything less or more going in there?
It's a bit unpredictable, as any forecast is a forecast, so there is potential to move. I don't know, is Ewan online? He might be able to come in with a fuller explanation for you.
Ewan, can you come in?
Thank you and good morning, committee members. We continue to be extremely challenged in terms of the level of demand on our services and associated costs. There was some recovery plan actions agreed by the IGB on the 20th of November. That will bring some reduction to that figure, but we don't expect, as Lindsay's report sets out, that the position is fully recoverable in year. I was at pains to say to the IGB, and I've been repeating this in all my internal management meetings and budget meetings since that point. That does not mean in any way we take the foot off the gas in terms of trying to do everything we can to mitigate that level of overspending and reduce it in any way we can during this financial year. I have to accompany that with some caution around we're going to have to manage performance and safety at the same time, and we can already see significant winter pressures start to hit our collective services. So that's going to be a difficult balancing act over the next few months, but absolutely key that we do everything we can to mitigate and reduce that level of forecast overspend. Well, that's helpful. Thank you.
Any questions, Councillor Coyne?
A follow-up to that, if I may, Chair. The plans you've got in place, then, Ewan, can we expect a markedly different performance next year? I mean, are you putting plans in effect which will have long-term impacts, or are you just firefighting at the moment?
Thank you, Councillor Coyne. The reality is a combination of both. It is very difficult to meet the statutory obligations in terms of provision of social care within the resource envelope we've got. Given the levels of demand we are seeing. However, I presented a paper to the IGB on 2nd of October, which set out a number of areas, none of them quick fixes, but a number of areas where we could deliver the priorities of the strategic plan within a reduced cost envelope, and we need to work across the whole system to untap that potential and the benefits associated with that as quickly as we can. Those things in themselves are not sufficient, in my view, to balance the position going forward. So we will also continue to need to look at other ways where we can get our provision into a financially sustainable position. And there's some for me around some of our approaches are probably going to have to be more radical than they have been in the past. I don't have all the answers as to what that is going to look like, but That's a challenge we've got going forward around sustainability, and I think we've got to embrace it, work with our communities, and take a more design approach to services going forward, so we can hope to get them within the financial envelope that we have available. I guess the other thing for me, and it's reflected in the letter that came from Scottish Government to COSLA along with the Scottish draft budget, is the need for reform. And we'll need to work with government around how reform might look like and how that can help us all be sustainable going forward. But it's key, reform has to be part of that picture going forward as well. So there's no single silver bullet. We need to try everything, but we also need to focus our capacity in the things that are going to make a material difference. Thank you.
Do you think you and the board has the courage and the confidence to make really, your word was radical, and that's the word I would have used as well, really radical, blue sky thinking, a complete new approach to this, because the wind's in your face, demand pressures are just going to keep going up. So, you know, a 6 million shortfall this year is a 6.5, 7 million shortfall next year if nothing's done about it. So it really needs a radical rethink and be prepared to take some very brave decisions. Do you think the board will do that?
I think if we get the process right and the engagement right, yes, because we need to, you know, to be fair, the board are absolutely clear in terms of, and none of the board members are comfortable in the position we find ourselves in. They're absolutely clear in terms of their responsibilities and in terms of setting a balanced budget and oversight of living within our means, difficult though that is. So yeah, I think the board are up for it. It's about how we work as a system and work with our communities to come up with the best solutions we can in the face of the challenges we've got. Thank you.
Thanks, Ewan. We will wait and watch with interest.
Can I do a follow-up on that? Ewan, you know I've been on the board for about 8 years now, and we've spoken for quite a long time about preventive measures. And, you know, I feel as if we're always sort of putting a plaster on the situation rather than preventing. Particularly I was thinking in areas like mental health, substance misuse, looking at prevention rather than we deal with the crisis, because obviously the number of admissions to hospital or the level of medication that's needed when issues are not addressed. Do you not feel that as a board, Dennis was talking about the preventive, the kind of taking a radical approach. For me, a radical approach is more about, instead of always looking at putting a plaster on, why are we not doing more about prevention? Do you not think that's a way forward for the board?
Absolutely, Chair. It needs to be part of the solutions. And I guess as a board, we have agreed some significant kind of framework decisions in that vein that need to be followed up with detailed delivery plans, if I can put them that way, in terms of how we make that shift and how we manage during such shifts. What is a pretty wicked problem around how do we shift resource when resource is always going to the firefighting end? And that's the wicked challenge that we absolutely have as a whole system.
And I know that's always the challenge moving forwards, but I think unless we do that, unless we start doing preventive measures, we're always going to be in the same position. So would it not be possible to use some form of earmarked reserves to work towards a prevention model and amongst the budgets? And I know there's not going to be a lot of reserves because of the financial position just now. If we ever were to fall into a financial position where we could do that, then I think that's something. And also looking at the commissioning models. So a lot of the commissioning models seem to be reducing rather than expanding services. Should we not be looking at commissioning more strategically moving forwards?
I think your second point, Chair, is the point I was trying to make. It's using those commissioning plans and building that shift in the delivery plans behind them, because the reality is we are not going to have huge amounts of bridging finance to manage a shift. So it does take a bravery in terms of the implementation.
Lindsay, could I ask, just on your report, this is quite a really simple answer, and I'm probably just not understanding it, but the earmarked reserve side, I noticed that there was a balance potentially for homeless accommodation and Ukrainian refugee support that didn't seem to have moved. Was there a reason it didn't move significantly?
So the Ukrainian refugee support funding comes in quite a large amount of money initially, and then we drip feed it into the services as we use it. It may just be that it's not been needed in the first half of the year because we already have budget to support that. I don't know if there's any additional information. No, that's the reason. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, on the same page, Lindsay, there's a couple of things that jump out at it. You mentioned Ukrainian, just below it is homeless. I thought you'd actually mentioned homeless, Chair, but looking at homeless, 5% of that budget seems to have been spent during the year. Does that mean that we don't have a homeless problem? And if we don't have a homeless problem, why have we got 2 million quid sitting there? Nearly.
Okay, so this funding is specifically ring-fenced for support homeless, but it's not allowed to be used for general homelessness. There are restrictions around how we can use it. So that is why that money is sitting there. There is a plan being developed as to how we can use that to support homeless, increasing our housing stock, increasing our temporary accommodation to reduce the amount of homeless, and that plan's underway. But the main reason why it's not being utilised so far is because there are restrictions around how we can use it. It does not correlate to the fact that we do have a homeless problem in the council, but we just can't use that money just to reduce that. But there are medium to long-term plans being put in place to try and reduce it.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, the fund is ring-fence. Is it a mechanism, a brokerage perhaps, a ScotGov, where you can swap funds, you can give them back £1 million for this and get £1 million for something else in its place? If that money can't be used for the purposes that we would like to use it, then can we repurpose it by trading it somewhere else? A second part of that question about usage, you mentioned that you're looking at ways to use it for homeless accommodation. Is that something you would have to negotiate? Is that permissible under the grant conditions? Or would you have to negotiate those with the government?
I'll start with the second question then. So in terms of increasing our temporary housing stock to reduce the amount of homeless, then we can use that funding to do that. So that's not one that we would need to negotiate. In terms of other funding and restrictions around it, we have approached Scottish Government around looking at the terms and conditions around it and challenging those and asking for those. So it's been something we've done in the past to see if we could use it in a different way, because we recognise that locally it might not be the solution for us. So if we do it in a slightly different way, and that has been successful in several areas of housing to do that. So it's not something that we would shy away from, and we're quite keen to try and do that if we see a different way of using the funds. Okay, sticking with the same page, I've got question marks on quite a few things here. I kind of maybe to try and group them all together. The ones I've mapped: employment fund, nothing spent at all. And in today's climate, I find that strange. There must be some reason for that. Looking further down, COVID-specific funding, I've just wondered what that was. There wasn't a great expend on that. Is that money that might have to go back? But again, sticking with employability, with employability funding, there's money sitting there that hasn't been spent. Is that because we haven't got the resources to spend it, or we haven't got anything to spend it on? Thank you. Yep. So we'll start with the employment fund first. So the employment fund was set up to allow us to expedite the savings through voluntary severance. So if staff leave on voluntary severance, then instead of using a payback after 2 years, we can take the saving immediately. So that employment fund has been utilised over the past 3 or 4 years that it's been in place, but it tends to be at the end of the year when we look at the costs coming through. So I wouldn't expect to see any spend against that until the last quarter. And I know that it has been utilised at the end of 23-24 to bring that balance down. And the COVID-specific funding, I don't have the information to hand on that. I think that was to do with grants to businesses, and I'll pick up and get some further information for you on that. Again, it's timing. Employability, that's funding that we've, again, grant funding that we've had to ring fence. I don't know if there's anybody from the service that could shed light on that one. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of the employability funds, we've retained some of the fund to see the end of the programme. So at this moment in time, we have money up till the 31st of March. There was a ring-fenced portion of that employability money to see things through at the end of the programme. So there is money being spent against the employability grant that we receive as part of UK Shared Prosperity and the other funding streams. There was a proportion that allowed us then to ensure that there was an overhang beyond, which is within the grant conditions that enables us to maintain that work so that we see it all through, so that we don't have to start winding things down earlier than the programme end in that sense. So it's that bit of buffer that allows us to do it, but the money is all planned for in terms of spend, so it will be spent on the employability agenda.
Thanks for that. Okay, if I carry on, I want somebody else to come in. Bring Councillor Quinn in, because I don't want to hold this thing.
Thank you. A couple of questions. So I'm on page 27 here, the management efficiency statements. I noticed that the unachieved column is almost entirely made up of one item, 195,000 for review of primary class sizes. And on the previous page 26, there's another one kind of large item that dominates that, trading standards SLA rebate. So can we have a bit more information about why we've achieved nothing that we were planning to achieve in those 2 points? Thank you.
Thank you. So the trading standards SLA rebate, so we have an SLA with Stirling Council, and in the past few years they've not had their staffing up to the full level, so we've had a reduction in the cost of that service, and we expected that to be the case again when we set the budget for 24-25. However, they've been able to recruit to the post and increase that service, so the reduction is not there. So on the positive side, they have trading standard staff in place and that service is running nearly full capacity. However, we don't get the cash saving, and that's why it is a cash saving, because we've been monitoring it through the year, so it's not one that we'd be able to take again next year.
Okay.
For the other saving, which was review of primary class sizes, Michael, were you able to come in on that one?
I'm happy to do so, Councillor. We have reduced the number of primary classes, but because of a number of absences, we haven't achieved the cash saving. But we've implemented the policy decision and we've reduced the number of classes. I hope that helps.
Reduce class sizes but not save any money. Can you
because we've had to provide cover for absent colleagues. That's
fine. Thank you.
Actually, a follow up on that one then. That would suggest that we can make savings by reducing the primary class sizes. That's presumably by staff reductions. Do we have control over? I thought that was something that was imposed upon us, teacher levels.
We are maintaining our teacher numbers, and have done so, but we still have opportunities for a reduction in the number of classes overall with our falling pupil roles.
Understood that answer. Is the saving on teacher staffing or other staffing?
It is, yes, correct. You're correct. It is a saving in teacher staffing. And what we're committed to do is maintaining our teacher numbers at the 2022 level. And we've increased our number of teachers. The information produced by Scottish Government yesterday showed we've increased our number of teachers this year. And that is reflected in this saving we've had to provide cover for absent staff.
I understand that now. You're actually allowed to go back to reset to previous levels, and that's where the saving is going to be obtained.
Yes, that's correct.
Thanks. Okay. Brian, do you want to?
No, that was it.
You again then? Okay. I'll take the figures. Page 18, please, Lindsay. Yeah, 5.5, talking about the integration scheme there. It says the Council's uncommitted reserve at just over 2%, etc. The Council has no capacity to support any additional contribution. I mean, who makes the decisions here? This is a significant risk for the Council that's required to make an additional contribution considering its own challenging financial position. So, I mean, who decides in these matters?
If there was a contribution to be made to the IJB, then that would be a decision of council that they would do that.
Thanks. Moving on to page 20. Sorry, that's not. At the bottom, allocation of capital funding, Nature Restoration Fund, £100,000 grant withdrawn by Scottish Government. What was that for and why was it withdrawn?
As part of the funding towards the increase in the pay award, Scottish Government had a look to see what funds they had available, and one of those mechanisms was to remove the Nature Restoration Fund allocation to councils for 24-25 on the basis that that would be reinstated next year. So the grant that we had initially thought we were getting had been withdrawn by the Scottish Government to use to offset the pay increase.
Okay, what does the Nature Restoration Fund do? Restores nature.
Sorry, I'll bring Kevin in on that one so he can explain it better than I ever could.
Thank you, Councillor. The Nature Restoration Fund is one of these funds that we have received over a number of years now, and it's used to support the development of nature and biodiversity within the authority area. It's utilised quite often around about capital monies, and we have over the years worked with local community organisations in terms of developing various different projects that supports that development of the biodiversity.
Thank you very much for that. That's page 20, page 25 now. Right. Yes. Yes, a question on corporate services. That second block down under corporate services. Variance forecast to budget is 579,000 adversely. So that looks like a reduction in expected income. Is that correct? And what is it about?
So corporate services holds a number of savings that are across the council. So they cover place, people and partnership and performance, but they're not allocated to those areas. So that's why we have a credit budget. So it's not income, it's actually a reduction in overall council spend. So there's one of the areas in there is turnover, so a significant saving for turnover that is then met through savings within the services. So what we do is we allocate that through the year. So the overspend of 579 is assumed to be offset by the underspends in the service areas that are achieving those savings.
Okay, thanks for writing furiously. Page 25 now. No, that is page 25, page 26. Just a couple of simple wee questions. No, right, here we go again. A couple of simple wee questions on page 26. At the bottom end of P&P, reduction in loans fund interest charges. Is that simply because of the reduction in the bank rate and things like that? These aren't negotiated rates, they're floating rates, are they?
So the loans fund is calculated based on what borrowing we've had to do based on our capital programme over the past 3 years. So when we look to set the budget, we look to see what spender has. So we've had consistent underspends in our capital programme over the last few years, which has meant that we've not had to take the borrowing that we had initially thought. So that then impacts on our loans fund charges. So we have the principal repayments and the interest that comes into that figure. So that's how we're making the saving, because we've not had to borrow as much as we'd initially planned through an approved capital programme.
That makes perfect sense. I misread that as rates. I should have, instead of just charges. Okay, and at the end of the removal of LLP budget, public buildings removal of LLP budget, sort of near the bottom, I think. What is LLP? I understand limited liability partnership. That's obviously not what it means here.
I always get these two confused, so I can't remember if it's the Coles Norton one or the quite much. I think it's Coles Norton. So it was a limited liability partnership that we were part of, and that arrangement has ended. So we no longer need the budget to go into that. I can get more information on that if you want.
No, that's okay, that's fine. Just but the ending of a partnership.
Yes.
Fine, thanks. Okay, that's page 26. Over the page to 27. Right. Yeah, no longer making payment to leavers. Fifth point down, no longer making payment to leavers who write in request arrears. I mean, I take it legal are okay with that.
Yes, when we put the saving forward as part of the due diligence to verify that, we had a number of discussions and research into the legitimacy of making that. So within our council policies, that is legitimate for us to do.
Thank you. Same page, halfway down. Support and Wellbeing, review of leisure services, option A. What is option A?
Testing my memory to go back to the 24-25 budget. I do not have that information in my head at the moment. There were a series of options put forward for savings, and option A, which is the one that was taken. I don't have the detail to hand, but I could again send on unless any of my colleagues.
If it's rubbish.
Understandable, Lindsay, considering where you were sitting in your head.
You can keep yours on, by the way, do you know that?
Oh, did I? I thought I could before, and I just said I couldn't, but that's good.
No, you can't, it's chair. That's so. We can get that from Robbie later on. There's no panic. That's fine. Just put that as a to follow. Okay, that's that. Page 27. Over on page 28 now. Yeah, in leisure and sports development again, an underspend in the wellbeing hub operating costs. What wellbeing hub? It's just above the blue bar on the page, right in the middle of it. The line starts leisure, 122, underspend.
It's the fourth box down, I think.
Fourth box down.
Yeah, leisure and sports development, and it's just above the bold part.
Thank you. Yeah. So I think this is what I was referring to as the management fee we had previously for the old leisure bowl, that we've kept some of that funding to support some of the services Likes of the swimming, under sports development. Is that right? Yeah.
It's the real one, so although it's the building not operating, we can give
So absolutely, as Lindsay's indicated, it's to do with the subsidy that we previously provided to Alva Leisure Bowl. We kept some of that money back because we had no swimming facilities available for the children, so some of that pays for the swimming facilities, and then that's the balance that is left.
Ah, right, so it's a legacy. Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a quick question, Councillor Coyne? It's just back at the first table we were at, page 17. I was just reflecting as we were sitting, we'd asked a lot of questions about obviously HSBC, the IJB, and the kind of savings that they had to make, and we were talking about the kind of prevention side, and I noticed that the transformation fund has a significant amount that hasn't really been spent, and I just wondered, with the importance of us making savings and having a plan moving forward to make those savings, why more of the transformation fund hasn't been used?
Thank you, yes. So the transformation fund consists of a number of commitments, including the recently approved commitment for the social work IT system to take that forward, which is quite a significant chunk of funding. So a lot of these projects are in train at the moment, but it takes a while for them to get started if we have to recruit to posts or if we have to go out to engage consultants. So there is a significant portion of that amount of money committed so far. It's just not actually being realised in terms of spend at the moment. But you will start to see that as we go through quarter 3, quarter 4, and it'll be reported on as part of what the commitments are against that. We also report that through the Be the Future board as well, so the information on what commitments are against that fund and what amounts have been drawn down against it are reported through the Be the Future board as well, and that would, the September outturn will be due to come to the next board meeting for that.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Coyne, what's that again?
Thanks very much. Okay, where was it? Page 28. Yeah, this is maybe not really so much of a finance question. Maybe it should be asked later, but since Lorraine's here, I'm going to ask it. The expenditure of the over, this is, sorry, page 28, and it's just below that blue bar we're on in the section that starts, the words are devolved schools, that section that starts there. And it talks halfway down, but ASN is forecasting an overspend of 268,000. I'm getting a feeling that the trajectory in ASN requirements is constantly upwards, and it seems to be, I thought I'd read somewhere that something like 40% of children were in receipt of ASN attention of some sort, which I found staggering. I just wonder, it's not really a question for you, to be honest with you. It's a question for education. Just wondered if we are over-diagnosing here. I think I've asked this question before, but it just seems to me that on an upwards, what's happening that we're suffering this requirement?
So I think we referred earlier to some statistics that were published yesterday by the Scottish Government, and within those statistics it shows the number of children across the country that are being diagnosed with additional support needs, and Click Manager's in line with the national trend. Now that still begs the question as to whether we're over-diagnosing or we're now diagnosing in place of when we didn't. And I think that's really tricky to work out. There's certainly been an increase following COVID of children with additional support needs coming forward and requiring support. But there does seem to be an increase in trend across the country, which is a valid increase in trend. But there is also, I suppose we're getting better at recognising when children do need support, and instead of in the past where they might have been excluded from school, we've got a zero exclusion approach in Click Manager, so those children stay in our schools, but they do require additional support. So I think I'm not giving you a categoric, yes, we're over-diagnosing, because I think it's complex, and there are children within there who might not have been getting support before, and we're recognising that, but there is also an increase across the country.
Lorraine, is that to do with, sorry to shoot in Councillor Coyne, but you know, we used to have like, huge waiting lists for CAMS, like children would be on waiting lists for CAMS for like 18 months. Is there a different way of diagnosing children now so they don't have to be on that waiting list, that they can get support more quickly?
Certainly within education, we don't wait for a CAMS diagnosis and being able to offer additional support within our schools. We look at what the child needs in the classroom and what they might need to be able to access that. And I did hear recently that, you know, some CAMS services across the country are not actually taking referrals at all, you know, so that situation. So we couldn't rely on the CAMS diagnosis. I think we go with what is needed on the day for the child.
Yeah, I think that certainly seems a positive move forward because children previously were on CAMS waiting lists for so long, and it means children are getting the help they need. Do you think that, I mean, Councillor Coyne was referring to diagnosis, but there's a whole range of issues in there, including trauma and adverse childhood experiences as well. Do you think that's coming into the equation?
So when the Additional Support for Learning Act came in, which I think was 2006, and there's been various updates to that, there was a much wider range of needs being recognised. And so there's temporary needs that come in, which are additional support for learning, which could be a bereavement, for example, and that has affected the child and affected their access to learning. It could be something, their own illness, but it's not the same type of kind of disability approach that we took before. So I think we're much more attuned to wellbeing issues. And particularly in this area, the number of children who have experienced trauma in their family life, or those family members have experienced trauma, and that generational issue. So I think we are much more able to recognise those things. The work of our educational psychologists, I think, is sector leading in Clogmanager, particularly around trauma. So I think we do recognise those needs and try and address them as much as we can. But it is a complex area and it's definitely increasing.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Lorraine.
So do you think they were actually looking at a new normal in education then? Basically, we're lifting the base level up from what was the wraparound to an enlarged wraparound, and that will become the normal from this point onward. We may just have to face up to that.
I agree with that. I think we are, that's the normal, and that's what we have. We have to adapt our systems and everything that we have to be able to cope with that. Yeah.
Right. Let's stick with it, Chair.
Yeah.
Thanks. Page 30, please, Lindsay. The item I've marked.
Councillor Coyne, we're struggling with time a wee bit. Could you maybe make this to sort of last couple of questions? Is that okay?
Wow, right, okay.
Yeah.
Better look for the
I'm being reminded of the time.
Comes, right. We just started quite a few more. I don't know how to prioritise these. What I'll do is I'll do them in writing later after the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Anybody else? Yeah, okay, thanks so much, Lindsay. Apologies for that, Councillor Coyne. Just quite a big agenda to get through. So thank you for that, Lindsay. That should be the end of the questions section, and I shall then move on to moving and seconding of the paper. I'm happy to move the paper. I feel as if, again, we have really comprehensive results, which I realise are significant for the service to pull together, particularly when you look at the level of tables and the level of detail. And I fully understand why sometimes just didn't come immediately to mind, because of the amount of information that needs to be put into these papers. And you know, happy to note the paper. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Coyne. And we can move to debate. Would anyone like to debate the paper? Councillor Benny.
Thanks. It's more of a situation and a debate. The fact that we're not able to actually look at the whole thing is going to be in paper form, and however many weeks before we get the stuff that we were supposed to be looking at the end of that. I don't know how we can actually say that it's okay just to finish at that point. I know what you're saying is the fact that it's the time is of an essence, but at the same time, we're looking at things that are quite deep-seated that we need to actually bring out, and we'll not bring that out by going, well, halfway through, well, we can't go any further because we've got a big agenda. We'll always have a big agenda, so it's I'm not comfortable with saying yes, I agree with this, because we're not hearing it all. Thank you.
Just maybe coming on that, it wasn't intended to stifle questioning Councillor Benny. Obviously, Councillor Coyne had quite a number of questions, and obviously the priority questions, hopefully Councillor Coyne feels he's answered, but we can follow up, and had obviously had the pre-agenda meeting as well. But obviously there's opportunity, if other councillors had the opportunity to question as well. So I had obviously guided the chair there, so hopefully I've not overtly ensured that Councillor Coyne's not getting full scrutiny of the paper, and ensuring that Audit the Scrutiny Committee has the opportunity to scrutinise the papers. So it certainly wasn't intended to stifle debate or questioning.
I think to reassure Councillor Coyne, myself and Councillor Coyne have had a lot of discussions about how we may follow up after meetings with officers and with others. So I think I will make absolutely sure that Councillor Coyne gets a chance to follow up after the meeting with maybe another meeting to raise these questions. But certainly I take your point fully, Councillor Benny, that I think I'm always reluctant to stop scrutiny, because I think we're certainly told by General Audit that that's so important that we do scrutinise papers and being led by officers. But I think, certainly Councillor Coyne and myself will follow up to make sure that these questions are answered and that we are doing our full scrutiny.
Yeah, thanks. I just had to, put my opinion in there, so thank you for that.
Yep, Councillor Coyne.
Thank you.
Sorry if I started them off.
I'm very happy that Councillor Benny brought that point up. I think had I felt that any of my questions were those that might challenge the validity of the paper, I would have made that point. I think mostly it's clarification for me of information that's been presented, and I'm quite happy to take, not the gamble, but take the chance that it's simply a question of information, doesn't challenge the paper per se. So in that case, I will follow up. The only point I would make is that since this is a public meeting and a public forum, whatever I discover at some point should be revealed to the public that's significant.
Yeah, we should bring it up to
in a follow-up next meeting. I think just maintain the probity of the whole thing.
I think that's a fair point, and I was thinking if we do anything out with committee, it's really important that we bring it to committee. So it's important that it is in the public domain and that the public see us as doing the adequate scrutiny. So I think it is a really fair point, and that's something we want to take forward. Yeah, absolutely. So it's a learning point, but I think certainly, I would always want to keep debate moving forward, but hopefully we can follow up afterwards and then bring it back to a subsequent meeting.
Sure. For the reasons I've mentioned, is why I'm quite happy to second the paper, because the paper is giving us information. I'm not challenging the validity of the information, so there's no real challenge to the paper as such. It's just information, so that's why I'm quite happy to second the paper that contains a phenomenal amount of information. And it must require a phenomenal amount of effort to put it all together. And there's no surprise really that parts of it are occasionally difficult to interpret. So thank you for the work you've done on it, Lindsay, you and the team. And as I say, I'm happy to second it.
Anyone else want to debate the paper? Oh, happy to note the paper. Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to item 5, and it's Lindsay again, HRA Financial Performance 24-25 as of September 2024. Lindsay.
Thank you. So similar to the last paper, following comments from the committee at the last meeting, I thought it'd be good to separate the housing revenue account from the general fund to give it its own place to highlight the information separately. So I hope that helps committee. The paper provides an update on the financial performance for the housing revenue account for the year ending 31st of March 25 based on actual spend for the second quarter to September. Revenue is forecasting a surplus of 4.29 million, which is 1.35 greater than budgeted. This is a favourable movement of 346,000 since last reported. Detail of the over and underspends by subjective area are provided in Appendix 1 with explanations. The capital programme is also forecasting an underspend of 3.689 million across various projects, with 4.971 proposed to be carried forward. The report provides a summary of the main projects contributing to this underspend, and detail by project is provided in Appendix 2. The report also reflects the revenue and capital budget adjustments approved by Council at its meeting in November. So I'm happy to answer any questions on the paper, assisted by colleagues from the service.
Maybe come in first. I noted that we have purchased new properties off the shelf, and I noted that there was some increased rent due because of those properties that were taken online. Do you think there'll be further improvement in rent coming into the service due to the purchase of those properties as we go through the period?
Thanks, Councillor. Purchased everything that we're going to purchase this financial year, so no further acquisitions in year. But yeah, looking forward to the new financial year, our budget for a further acquisition of 20 properties next year. So clearly we'll be targeting the turnaround time on those properties to get through those as quickly as we can to maintain and obviously gain that rental income without any delay.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that answer, because I was just thinking and reflecting on the paper. I thought, you know, for as we were talking about long-term sustainability, like we obviously are seeing increased rent from those properties, so it makes sense if we've got an underspend in the capital budget, I would say, to purchase more. Yeah, so that's an excellent answer. Thank you. Anybody else want to come in? Councillor Coyne?
Okay. Andy, looking at page 45, third item down, last line, I read, additional upfront rental costs unknown at the time of budget setting. That sounds like a bit of slipshod management. Can you comment on that?
Sorry, Councillor Coyne, where is that exactly? Sorry, page 45?
Third one down, transport-related expenditure.
Yep.
The last.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I've got it. Yeah, I got it, thanks. Thanks, Councillor Coyne. Yeah, there's a bit of work going on at present to review transportation arrangements. This is all related to our trades operation. So clearly we've quite a large fleet operation there to support the trades. There's a review of the transportation need at the moment to understand what we have and is that best suited to what we're doing at present. So clearly we've got, as I've said, quite a large fleet. There's obviously a benefit financially to reducing that fleet if we can, but there's also clearly a kind of green angle to that as well if we can reduce that fleet. So what I would say is that yes, there's a piece of work going on at the moment to review what we have in terms of the fleet and to make sure that we're utilising that as best we can, so we don't have instances where we need short-term hire or anything coming at us from left field. We know about it up front.
Really, I was more, I'm not suggesting you shouldn't review your fleet requirements at all. No, it's just the idea that there were costs, upfront rental costs, unknown at the time of budget setting. So that suggests some poor management of the system. If someone's entering into a contract that they actually don't know all the costs of, that's something that needs to be looked at.
Yeah, I think that's, again, it's to do more with the unknown number of additional vehicles that might be required as opposed to actual specific individual cost or the rent of a vehicle. It would be to do with the additional requirements for vehicles and trying to quantify that was difficult.
That makes sense. Just a question of semantics, really. Sorry about that. Okay. Go down 2 sections to third-party payments, and the second line in it says £885,000 relating to payments to subcontractors. Now, I don't quite understand why you've got an overspend if you've got a subcontractor. That suggests you've got a contract, and a contract has known elements to it. So why would there be an overspend on contracts?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Coyne. Yeah, I think clearly we've seen a number increases, inflation increases through the use of subcontractors, whether it's materials or the labour that comes with that cost passed on to us. Whilst we do have contracts in place, a large number of our operations, we don't have fixed contracts in place for all operations, so we are subject to fluctuation and cost with subcontractor work, depending upon what it is. Some of that could be quite specialist work that we don't ordinarily require. It might be specific, say, one-off items throughout the year that occur. State contracts, those type of arrangements, we have to pull in subcontractors that are not under a fixed contract. We can incur additional costs associated with them.
Is there a level at which you have to require pre-approval for that? If you're breaching the budget effectively by making a contract more expensive, having to make a contract more expensive, do you need to get that approved?
That's Councillor Coyne. Yeah, I mean, it's offset with the income that's achieved through the trades operation. So that offsets the expenditure there. The income that the trades operation achieves is higher than the expenditure going out the door on the contractor side of things. But yeah, clearly we would have to follow appropriate process where we look to bring in a contractor that we don't have a fixed term arrangement.
Okay, is that offset, is that shown on this page somewhere?
Yes, so the offset is shown under the last section under income. So there's the increased income from servitor work in progress estimate, which is partly offset by the third party payments. So that's the third sentence down, 1.186 million.
You got me there, I missed that. Okay, thanks very much.
Councillor Harrison, will you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a question on, so at the last but one full council meeting, we approved an uplift on the Lochies Road development. I see here that it's now going to be delayed again. Are we in danger of seeing further cost increases on that Lochies Road development, which could lead to either it not being built at all, or we don't eventually build what we expected to build?
Thanks, Councillor Harrison. Yeah, I mean, clearly the longer it goes, and we've said that the construction industry is, we're still seeing inflation there, quite significant inflation. So yeah, there is that potential. What I would say is that we're working hard in discussions with Pubco East, South Scotland, and the Scottish Government to review the position, the pricing of that job. I mean, just on Tuesday past with the Scottish Government to look at some of the figures and some of the issues. So we're pushing to get as best a position on that with regards to the financials, with a view to go back to the Scottish Government to have a conversation about how that's shaping up. But certainly we're fully committed to try to make this work.
Thanks.
Any other questions? No. Thanks so much. And I'm happy to move this paper again. Although it's a smaller paper, I realise the amount of work that goes in from you all in terms of these figures are all tons of work that's going on, and I actually was very encouraged to see the buyback of housing, so with the homelessness issues that we have in the wee county. So much appreciated, and thank you very much, and happy to move the paper. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Benny. Thank you. We can now debate the paper. Would you like to debate the paper? No. Happy to note the paper. Yes. On to item 6 on the agenda, and the report of the Chief Social Work Officer 2023-2024, and that will be presented by Chief Social Work Officer Sharon Robertson. Sharon.
Good morning to members. So I'd like to present the Chief Social Work Officer annual report for the period of 1st of April 2023 to 31st of March 2024. You'll see it's quite an extensive, detailed report, and it covers a format and guidance that's a standard process through the Office of the Chief Social Work Advisor in the Scottish Government. So it follows sort of key headings around our governance arrangements, service delivery, our resources and workforce. Like I say, it looks back over the past financial year. So the report effectively provides an overview of social work and social care services and the activity within the context and delivery of statutory functions for the reporting period. It includes performance information in relation to key areas of our statutory social work and public protection. The report also highlights key activities, our achievements and the challenges that have been faced by social work and social care services within a context of high service demand and the budgetary pressures that have been experienced both across the Council and the Health and Social Care Partnership. I also just want to take this opportunity within the annual report to outline the achievements and recognition and commitment and dedication of our staff across the social work and social care workforce, also including our unpaid carers who support children, young people and adults across Clackmannanshire every day in very challenging circumstances. So I'm happy to take any questions from the committee. And I've also got service leads from Children's Justice and also have Wendy and Ewan here for any questions that may be asked around adults. The recommendations is to ask yourselves to scrutinise, note and endorse the content of the annual report and also approve submission to the Office of the Chief Social Work Advisor to the Scottish Government. So, thank you.
Thanks very much, Sharon. I mean, I'll kick off here in terms of, I was really encouraged to see the early help and family support for people who are referred to social work, which I think is an excellent approach, as you probably know. I just wondered what sort of outcomes were coming from that. So when people are referred to that additional help, does it mean they then don't fall into needing additional support from social work?
Okay, I'll start with the question of Gillian online, who's actually service lead for the new early help intervention team. But certainly the team has been operating for just over a year, really within the context of this report, but further on as well. And we're actually seeing some really early key impacts. The team are responding to about 64% of the referrals that are coming through or requests for assistance from the community, which is then preventing, if you like, these children and families progressing into a more statutory service through our locality teams. So as I say, it's early days. But before I bring Julian, I also want to say that we got a COSLA award for the early help team, which is a national award. So we're up for in a particular key category. We didn't win that category, but actually we got the best team awards sort of nationally. So I think considering the team's only been operating for 12 months, just to even get that accolade is an achievement itself. But we are seeing some really positive impacts. So I'll bring Julian in as service lead for the service. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. In terms of additional outcomes information, I think Sharon has covered the majority. The whole purpose of the service is to engage earlier and to prevent escalation. What we are seeing is that a very small proportion of families go on to require any sort of statutory intervention, such as through the children's hearing. And what we are learning through the development of the work is how to take more of an outreach sort of approach. So some of the work that is being delivered through our mothering baby groups, baby massage groups, etc., is enabling us to identify families who wouldn't normally approach social work for support, but help provide a little bit of support, and then what we're doing is signposting them to the third sector supports that are also outlined in Sharon's reports. So Sharon's Chief Social Work Officer report, so that we don't, we're not seeing a high number of repeat referrals coming into the service either. There's some of the early outcomes. As you'll appreciate, it's quite early for us to have long-term outcomes.
It's really positive, and I think maybe a model of good practice, but I would think, and I'll frame this in a question, that in view of what we've seen in the press recently about children not being picked up, having an approach that isn't as frightening to families makes families more likely to come forward and feel they'll be supported rather than hiding away. Would you feel that that was the case?
Yes, and progressive pieces of work we're doing is our Family Support Commission Consortium, and that's an approach aligned with our Family Wellbeing Partnership work. So we're setting up local hubs, and again they'll be situated locally within towns and villages in the localities, so families can come in themselves and to seek support and advice on a whole range of issues or concerns or just additional help before it reaches a referral, as we say, a request into social work for early help. So again, Gillian was leading on that piece of work. I don't know, Gillian, if you'd like to say a bit more about the development of the approach that we're working on.
Not around the hubs. I don't have anything specific to add to that, Sharon, but I did want to highlight in relation to the query about informal access to services and those early approaches. I wanted to highlight some of the examples that have come through the Whole Family Wellbeing Fund, such as our summer programme that we delivered in partnership with Third Sector and with Planet Youth. Quite a few of the parents who attended that have subsequently accessed ongoing support. None of those families would have had access to any services, drop-in type services over the summer. And it was an opportunity for them to develop a relationship with a service that has helped either signpost them or provide what they've been looking for. So in terms of that example of those informal, more accessible services, it's those sorts of models have come out in partnership with the Family Wellbeing Partnership.
Very much. I think certainly in my own work, where I worked with a lot of people who've been through trauma and domestic abuse, that were very afraid to come forward because they thought their children would be removed. So are you seeing that people have got less fears in that area now from that?
Yeah, we've done quite a substantial amount of work around that, and I've got Scott online as well. Through our work of Strive, we're picking up families early and in conjunction with partners with our police and our third sector, as well as universal services, to ensure that actually families do feel that when they're asking for help, that there is I think there has been a change around actually don't approach social work because you may actually, be at risk of losing your children. We've been working really well with quite a significant number of years with families through our early help family support approaches. But I'll bring Scott in because we're doing some really good initiatives around the domestic abuse work, and particularly through our Violence Against Women partnership, but also through Strive and the work of the Justice Hub. So Scott, are you able to come in and maybe just provide a bit more of an update?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sharon, and good morning, everybody. Really just to highlight, I think what we really are doing differently in Clackmannanshire is picking up on the early intervention and the preventative work that the Chair highlighted as important right at the very beginning of today's meeting. We are complementing the Family Wellbeing Partnership. We are complementing the early intervention in terms of justice services. So I think that's a key point moving forward as well. We have adapted our justice team to be accessible. So non-statutory work is increasing, and in doing that, we are aligning with our partners with the same shared agenda to addressing things like domestic violence and so on. So when Gillian's talking about that early intervention, that can include support for family members that are within the justice system or are at risk of becoming involved in the justice system as well. So there's a lot of collaborative working and preventative work there. And we continue to develop that, not just around the area of domestic violence, but we are now looking to move forward with areas with difficulties with addiction. And as I've shared previously as well, difficulties with sustaining tenancies. So we've got women support workers, support groups, tenancy workers, all of these areas covering the stuff that isn't immediately obvious. And in terms of outcomes, I think we've shared at various forums about the increase in the uptake of services, particularly with survivors with domestic violence as well. So we've got quite a lot of qualitative data now where people have felt safe to actually disclose and be supported through a justice or a diversion from justice journey. So lots of new forward thinking, I would suggest, from all partners around the table, and really working together to do more preventative work rather than that reactive firefighting that we're trying to move away from.
So just another quick couple of questions, then I'll bring in others. But just looking at I was looking at the Bairnshoes model, which I think is a great model. It's one that I was involved in the early implementation of it. Just a question on the Meadows. I think the Meadows is an excellent facility. I mean, I've been to visit it and I think it's a really nice area, but I was just thinking the Bairnshoes model was more like a home type environment for children to go into rather than like a sort of clinical environment. And I wondered if there was any thoughts to move towards that.
Thanks. So you'll see from page 61 of the report, it outlines the Bairnshoes strategic group that we've just set up very recently in partnership with Police Scotland, NHS Forth Valley and the 3 Forth Valley local authority areas. We are in the early stages of development. We've got some funding to take forward. We're not in the Pathfinder, but we've got some funding in order to develop a Bairnshoes local approach as a Forth Valley. So the Meadows is being used for the child investigative interviews. So it's a one place it's been set up because it is actually trauma. You'll see you'll know it's a trauma informed building, and it's also informed by trauma informed people who operate in there as well. So it's a place at the moment for our child investigative interviews with our new SCIM team. So that's our the Scottish Child Investigative Model that I've outlined in the report as well, that was just implemented at the beginning of the year too. So that's a very focused report around that. I've got Margaret online who might want to say a little bit around the SCIM and how that work's going. But the Forth Valley Bairnshoes strategic group, which I'm a member of, we've got some monies and we're looking to develop a local approach. So it isn't going to be in the Meadows, and that's not where the Bairnshoes will be. We've got Action for Children, so Children's First. I'd have to check the detail on that, but we've commissioned them through the money that we got from the Scottish Government to do some consultative work on actually what do we want a local Bairnshoes approach to look like for the Forth Valley area. So just to assure you that that's not going to be that is not the place for the Bairnshoes.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks so much. And just one final question, and I know probably Councillor Errol wants to come in, but there's been an 800% rise in bail supervision. Ouch, that is a massive number. And I just wondered on bail supervision whether those who are carrying out bail supervision are actually working to a risk need responsivity model or a good life model, looking at kind of building hope rather than, just dealing with the bail supervision.
I mean, I see it as a positive approach, but I'll bring Scott in just to give you the detail around that, your particular query, if that's okay, Scott.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. In relation to the bail increase, I'm absolutely delighted to see that. There is a massive push in terms of the Scottish Government to reduce the prison population. You'll be aware of that. I think it's on the news on nearly every single day. So we have worked hard to, along with our colleagues at the courts, to provide robust action plans to support people in an approach-focused way. So what we offer is a comprehensive support plan during that period of bail supervision. We have individuals that have very complex needs who would normally be placed on remand, so it is quite resource intensive. Whilst we have seen an 800% increase within Clickmanager of actually utilising that resource, Clickmanager still stays in the top percentile in Scotland for short-term custodial sentences and remand. So we still need to be offering more. We have brought in additional staff to meet that need, the majority of people who are subject to bail supervision, I'm glad to say it's been very successful, and we are able to signpost and access various resources, and through the development of the Justice Hub, we have that quick input as well. So things like CPNs, Keep Well Nurse, employability access, addiction support, all these elements are there as well. So I think we provide a very robust action plan and support package in partnership with the individuals that we're supporting. So it is very much a whole systems approach, which the Sheriff has absolutely bought into. So I think it speaks volumes that they are utilising the service a lot more than what has previously been available to them.
Actually, Scott, that it's a diversion from people going to jail rather than just a huge rise in crime, but it's good to hear that that's what's happening.
Yeah, it's a direct alternative to remand. So it is some of the most chaotic and most individuals that need the most level of support at that point in time and not further down the line. So it's important to get immediate access to the supports and stabilise. And obviously the monitoring is usually more than once a week, sometimes up to 3 times a week, and sometimes it takes 2 members of staff because of risk and so on as well. So very complex, but people that are in crisis as well. And beyond that, obviously you need to take in other considerations such as child protection and all the different areas as well. So a lot of collaborative working allows us to provide that facility to the courts and hopefully prevent people going into remand when they can be supported in the community more.
Yeah, thank you. I think some of the points I was going to raise have been touched on, but forgive me if I'm going to repeat the questions again. Section 5.22 of your report, which is page 68 of the paper, it touches on Glenorchy prison. Now, Scott touched on there about the Scottish Government's decision to look at releasing prisoners. Now, I can understand that although the Scottish Government's decision to release the prisoners serving 40% of a 4-year sentence, I think that equates to something like 16 months of a sentence, it may relieve a lot of the pressure on the social workers within the Glenorchy estate itself. But is that going to put more pressure on the existing social work staff when they are released? What extra pressure do you foresee on the services? And once the prisoner has been released, I'm assuming that he's not, his sentence has not been commuted. I mean, he was up to do something to carry on the rest of that sentence.
No, that's absolutely fine. There's a couple of questions in which I'll bring Scott in to give you the detail. I think in terms of impact, the early release, we've already had a tranche in the summer. It didn't have a major impact on social work, but it does have an impact on other services, so housing, health services, because there's not a lot of time in terms of planning and preparation for the person's release. So that was one of the impacts that we found. Small impact, but that was one of the things. I'll bring Scott in because there is potential. Your question's very valid. There is potential for impact, and the Scottish Government are consulting to get that information from local authorities and wider services in relation to what was the impact from the last one, which was just in the summer, so they can plan in terms of taking forward. And as you say, it's now reductions of 40%, not 50%. But I'll bring Scott in just to give you a little bit more detail around your questions.
Thank you. Thanks, Sharon. I think Sharon's accurate with what she's saying. In terms of the last prisoner release, it was based around short-term prisoners. Now, short-term prisoners come out and they are not subject to any statutory responsibility. They come out, no licence, nothing else, and they can just come out and just walk. We do offer voluntary through care to these individuals, but the uptake historically hasn't been the greatest, and I can understand why. Surrounding the nature of the reports that might go in that might lead to somebody receiving a custodial sentence, they might not then want to engage with that service moving forward. So there's a gap there. In terms of the short-term prisoner release, the most recent one, there was only about between 10 and 15 people that impacted on in terms of Click Manager. And with the next release scheduled for February, we project between 10 and 15 people will be released again, early release, with no statutory requirement to engage with any services. Now, as Sharon says, there's been a report on the last early release, but that hasn't been released yet, but we've certainly inputted to our findings. The findings haven't been significant because there has been no statutory requirement to engage. But what we were finding is that individuals were coming out with significant mental health difficulties, and there was no time to set up appropriate supports, housing, benefits, appointeeship, guardianship, and a lot of people falling through the cracks with that. One in particular for Click Manager, but I'm aware of this nationally. So that has been fed back. I'm also part of the Public Protection National Subgroup. So I was at a meeting yesterday about that, and I've highlighted these individuals that require support and how that could be done in advance of release. So moving forward, the real concerns that we have, there's not additional pressures as such, because these individuals would be coming out anyway in a few weeks or a couple of months further down the line, and it would be the normal demands on housing and so on. What we really have concerns about is the long-term prisoners and the potential impact that will have on resources moving forward. Moving forward with long-term release prisoners, they would still be required to engage with resources on a statutory basis in terms of justice services. That means supervising licences in the community, that means risk management, that puts significant pressure on housing at an early stage, it puts pressure on health services in terms of addiction support, mental health. There's a vast array of pressures, and for me just now, whilst this is in the prison, it is measurable. Once individuals go out into the community, these pressures are individual to each agency, and I think it's important that we monitor that, and we have certainly raised these concerns with Community Justice Scotland. I'm pleased to say that Scottish ministers and Scottish Government around the Criminal Justice Board are aware of the potential impacts moving forward for local authorities, and that has been looked at and considered. The last thing I would say is this increase in resources and pressures on community-based teams such as the Justice Team for Community-Based Disposals isn't something that's happened overnight. We have projected this for the last couple of years, and certainly within Click Manager, we have taken as many steps as possible to actually accommodate that. I said earlier that we foreseen an increase in bail supervision. By bringing in a worker in advance, we've been able to absorb that and increase that up to 800%. Likewise, we have been able to strengthen the experience of our staff with peripatetic staff and social workers to absorb some of the more complex cases that will be coming out as well. So within our gift of what we can build on and project and preempt, we've been able to do that. But ultimately, justice services and other services, if the shift is coming from SPS into the community, that needs to be reflected in the resources that need to be strengthened. And that goes all the way up to access to sheltered housing for complex individuals with licence conditions that need adapted housing, for instance, an ageing population within the prison system coming out into the community. So I think that's self-explanatory about the impact that will have on a number of services across the board.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Coyne?
Just for clarification, Sharon, on page 74 of our report, 23 of your report, it mentions 4 options. Are these listed somewhere elsewhere in the report, or can you tell me what those options are? Oh, sorry, my apologies, that's it.
No, actually, it's maybe helpful to maybe put some kind of abbreviations or some explanations around that. So the 4 options in relation to the SDS options. So I'll maybe just ask Wendy is that fine for you just to explain a bit more detail around them? I can give you a general oversight of, so option 1 is where the care package is, once the care package has been assessed, it's about individuals having 4 options that they can choose in terms of how they deliver, how that package will be, care package will be delivered. So option 1 is where the person gets the money themselves and they'll put in place their own. Option 2 is where it's a bit of a kind of hybrid of between the local authority, but I can get Wendy can come in and give you a bit more detail around. I've got a kind of high level of what they are, but in terms of a bit more detail around them, that'll be fine. Thanks, Wendy.
Morning, Wendy Forrest, I'm the Head of Strategic Planning and Health Improvement, Health and Social Care Partnership. Yeah, the self-directed sport, what it might be useful to do is just share a briefing around some of the elements related to self-directed sport. As we say, there are 4 options. It's around choice and control, but there are specific duties within social work practice that we need to align to, so we could do a 1-page which outlines all of that for you rather than trying to go through the different elements and the options within this meeting. That'd be helpful.
That'd be very helpful, thanks very much.
Yeah, that's understandable. I can never remember them off the top of my head. Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I think that's all, thanks.
That's all. No, that's fine. Well, thank you very much. And this was a fantastic paper. Really great to know what's going on in all the different strands. And I'm always just really reflecting on how those strands are all very different but come together as well, and how challenging it is to manage that whole portfolio of all that work. But to see the innovative work that's going on within your own work, Sharon, and the team is just fantastic. So I'm very happy to endorse the contents of the paper and approve its submission if the rest of the committee agree. So just, I'm happy to move, and Councillor Ailes happy to.
Yeah, extremely excellent report. It's a really in-depth report, and it really shows, it really opens your eyes to the complexities of the social work department and the myriad of things that it covers. I mean, it's absolutely, once you start reading the report, you start asking more questions and more questions. It's a brilliant report. I really like it. I'm happy to hear about the work. I know from my previous experience as someone who sat on the Prison Visiting Committee, just how important the social work is within the committee. I'm concerned that in prisons, there's 2 strands. It's punishment and it's rehabilitation. The rehabilitation part of a prisoner is extremely important. And as Scott says, we can't make the prisoners take part in the programmes that are existing. But once they do, the programmes need to be of a length that's going to have an effect on the prisoner on release. So to give a programme that's 6 months when someone's got a 10-year sentence doesn't mean nothing, it's just passing the time. However, going back to the report, excellent report, and I look forward to the next year's one. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Councillor Earl. We're open to debate. Anybody else want to debate the paper? Councillor Coyne?
Yeah, just to add to the comments that Councillor Earl has made, I think it's a superb report. In fact, I would say it's a model for many others. It's extremely readable. The information is presented extremely well. The blend of narrative and data is good. and the work that you do is phenomenal, and it's great work. Well done.
Anything else? Yeah, a round of applause. So we're all happy to endorse the paper and approve its submission?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much, Sharon. Thank you. Okay. And we shall now move on to item 7 on the agenda, HSCP, Clackmannshire Locality Performance Report 2024-25, audit on Q2, April to September, and it will be presented by Wendy Forrest, Head of Strategic Planning and Health Improvement. Welcome, Wendy, again.
Good morning again, members. So the performance report that we are presenting today represents a performance linked to adult social work in terms of the delegated services into the Integration Joint Board as per the Public Bodies Act. The paper is for consideration. The scrutiny of performance for the delegated adult social work service sits within the Integration Joint Board and is also presented within the subgroup committees of the IJB. The key indicators outlined within this report are aligned to the strategic commissioning plan and the priorities that we agreed with the public across Clackmannshire and Stirling before publication in March 2023. The focus is on independent living as long as possible for individuals as per national policy, and to ensure that people are living independently in a homely setting or at home where possible. It also relates to the implementation of the Carers Act, the Self-Directed Sport Act, which we've just mentioned, and all of the responsibilities that come with adult social work, which have been outlined already within Sharon's report in this previous agenda item. Given some of the conversation that we've had around this committee previously is about the contextual information which relates to the work that's underway. Before every Integration Joint Board, we tend to have, it's about a 5-minute presentation by video by a supported person, by a carer, or by our own services, whether within the HSCP or commissioned services within the third sector. These videos outline for IJB members at the start of the meeting, in a sense, why they are there and the focus on the commissioning decisions that they make within the IJB. There was a request from the chair of this committee that these videos be circulated, and we're happy to do that. We haven't been able to do it yet, but we're happy to do that to ensure that people are getting that wider context. I think one of the powerful ones which we had at our last meeting related to the commissioning of palliative and end-of-life care services, which for lots of people is a very sensitive and difficult area. Going forward, we will look to include examples within this report which relate to the impact of those commissioning decisions, as well as the transformation and change which Ewan's already referred to. For example, we've had alcohol and drug partnerships, a pilot running within social work within the locality of Clackmannshire, working closely with Scott's team in terms of justice, as well as with substance use services. This aligns us to the early intervention and prevention and harm reduction approach, which we are striving to move towards, which was also mentioned earlier in this meeting. So we continue to look at the pressures across our services. Our strategic needs assessment outlined the pressures that we would be under going forward, and we consistently look at those strategic needs in terms of our financial envelope, as well as the needs and demands within our service. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Wendy, I'll just fire in with a question to begin with. It's just on the achieving care closer to home, and I know it's been an ongoing challenge for people to be able to get back to home after coming out of hospital or whatever. Are you finding that this is becoming more of a challenge as time goes on? I know we've got a kind of elderly population, we have people who have significant struggles, and are you finding that that's becoming more challenging as time goes on?
Thank you for the question, Chair. In relation to our delayed discharges, which I think you're referring to, the numbers within Clacks and Stirling have all been have traditionally been very well managed, and the numbers that we have of people delayed within hospital are relatively small compared to other areas. We also have a dedicated service which is about ensuring that people are being assessed within the hospital before discharge and those packages of care being put in place. There is a whole programme of work to ensure that we've got an early intervention and prevention model around the Right Care, Right Time programme, which is about signposting. It's about getting the right care at the right time for people. The challenge of winter pressures, as you've already referenced, is already with us and speaks to an increasing demand. We seek to manage that demand within the resource that we've got, as well as doing that transformation work at the same time.
Do you think, I mean, I'm just actually speaking from personal experience, that a family member who was waiting to come out of hospital and had a significant amount of time to go back home, and by the time she went back home she was quite frightened and quite frail. Do you find that that then leads to increased pressure on services when they come out?
I think that nationally is the narrative around the longer that people are remaining in a hospital or even within an intermediate care bed, the challenge of bringing them home to a homely setting increases, particularly given the frailty of individuals.
Thank you. That's me. Any other questions? Councillor Coyne?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Wendy, I was having trouble with some of the data, pages 104, sorry, 102 onwards. In the third last column, which is the 2024-25 value, there's an awful lot of the data missing, so I was filling that in myself, just adding the corporate money quarter two values and just hoping that that was the information. But I got down to the bottom of that page 102, the last item. There's two values mentioned. There are two values mentioned, a 5 and a 13, which to me, if I add those together, they come to 18. But the figure in the box is 7.43, so I'm obviously misunderstanding something about what this data means. Do you see what I'm bottom of page 102 as an example? You've got a figure of 5 for the Q1 value and a figure of 13 for Q2. And I was assuming that would add up to 18, but it's 7.43. Am I misunderstanding?
I would need to go back and check the detail of the figures that you've got in front of you. My guess is that it would be relative to the numbers that are going through, so it's not the same people. So it might be a cumulative figure rather than an additional figure. But I can go back and check and get the detail for you.
Yes, thanks, because there's an awful lot of the data missing in that particular column. And I was struggling to, on other pages, it might be the same argument, but the next page, for example, 103, they don't add up, a couple of different figures. So I was kind of puzzled. It's maybe just me not understanding it, but I'd like to know why your figures are different from mine. But some explanation as to how these are calculated would be helpful. Wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely can do.
Oh, sorry, that's me.
No, that's you. Anybody else? No. Okay, well, thanks so much, and thank you for the, reflecting that you're going to bring additional information in future meetings. I appreciate that, and again, thank you very much for preparing this data for us as a committee. I really appreciate it, and I'm happy to move the paper. Any seconder? Councillor Earl? We're open to debate. Anybody like to debate the paper? No. Okay, thank you. Paper, we're all happy to move the paper, yeah? Yeah, okay, thank you. Really forgot to do that. Item 8 on the agenda is the economic development update, and the report is by Alison Davidson.
That's it.
Yep.
I'm Alan Davidson, Team Leader Economic Development at the Council. This is just a report update on the work of the Economic Development Team for the last year. We felt it was important to get the the wide range of activity that's going on. It includes the Clip Manager Works activity around employability. And happy to take any questions.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic report, and thank you so much for the case studies, because they were just brilliant to read. I really enjoyed them. But what I was wondering really in reading it was how you identify people. Like, so say for example, somebody would be really great for the Thrive programme, or somebody would be really great for employability support. Do they come forward to you, or are you able to find people?
There's a big range of referrals into us, Janine. So mainly the referrals come from DWP Job Centre, straight to our service, but we also get self-referrals. We have different services in the council will refer in, housing, social work. We're out in the communities. We've got the drop-in employability hub up in Primrose Street now, so people are knowing that we're there and people are dropping in. The referrals to Thrive will come through us as well, or through our poverty coordinator role.
Yeah, no, thank you. And do you find that like a lot of people are really struggling with anxiety at the moment? I know you said that in the report, but I just wanted to bring more of that out, how much there really is in anxiety. It's putting those barriers, and it came across loud and clear in the case studies for the number of people who are just not able to, even to get transport to work.
It is a huge issue and becoming more. We had a presentation from DWP yesterday highlighted that health issues and anxiety are the main barriers to work across the East region, actually, including Forth Valley and Clip Manager. We are trying with some of our commission programmes to put some support in place for that. The key worker service that we provide is bespoke in-person, person-centred support. So if a person is struggling with that, we will try and identify the best support individually for the people, rather than just go and try this or try that. We'll take them, we arrange travel, we'll pay for childcare to let them be able to access that. So it's very much person-centred support.
I could see that in the case studies, how it was really to the individual rather than just a generic support, which was helpful. And I think, is that something that you find is really useful, that you can tailor that support to a person rather than having off the shelf? This is what we do.
It's absolutely crucial to the service, I think, is the key worker support, where they're just taking that person on the journey. And although it's called employability support, some people can be on that journey very early stage for a long, long time. And we look at small wins of, we get the money advice for them, we get them out the house doing something, we get them to go somewhere or interact. That's a win for us, but it's not something we can report through the formal processes. They're looking at job outcomes or volunteering or training. So we've got a whole load of stories of people that are just progressing very slowly, but it's all a win for us. So yeah, it definitely helps. We find the group sessions are great, but that addressing each person's barrier is what makes the difference to get them along that pipeline.
Okay, just one more question. Do you think there's a barrier with some employers about taking on somebody who maybe has a disability, or they have a mental health concern or anxiety? Do you have any challenges in attracting employers to take people into employment?
It's difficult to see. A lot of employers are keen to give back and to do that, but there is always, employers just now are struggling with basics of paying their electricity bill, the rising staff costs, the increase in the living wage and all the rest of it. So if they're busy, and it's quite difficult for them to look at that extra resource that's needed to support that person. We've got some in-work support available through, if it's a parental employability support programme, we can support in-work. Fair Start Scotland supported in-work, and we've got a few still on that programme. We'd like to do more of that, but it's more resource and more key worker time. Our job brokers work very closely with the employers to try and support that progression into work, and what can we do when they've just started to make sure it's as easy as we can. We use the DWP access to work disability advisors as well. They'll go into the employer and make sure that there's provision in place for coping with disabilities in the workplace. There's quite a lot of support around it for employers. We're doing an employability conference in January up at Alloa Business Centre, where we've got NHS coming in to talk about their Healthy Working Lives programme, and DWP are coming to talk about their disability support for employers, and it's to try and get the message out to employers that there is support there through these different agencies. It's kind of bringing the lay partners and the business support partners together for an event, which is something we've not done before.
I think that's excellent because it'd be so frustrating to get people ready to go and then nobody wants to stay. Yeah, so that sounds really positive.
We've had some good results with Job Broker managing to change hours to suit people, or to just change like hybrid working to suit people, and the employers are happy to have that support to make sure they're doing everything right and they are making it as easy for the person as possible. So we've got good engagement with the businesses, we've got good employers in the area.
Very much. Anybody else got any questions? Councillor Coyne?
Thanks. Thanks very much. Wendy, quickly, first of all, on page 110, top of the page, it says, blah, blah, strategic priorities for Climate Manager, which are listed in section 9, brackets 1 of this report. I couldn't find section 9 in the report, as it seemed to run out of numbers, so about 5, something like that.
It's on page 109, sorry.
Page what?
Page 119, it's got our priorities, section 119. I think that's just standard part of the report.
Oh, page 119, this is from my page 119, okay, we'll get that later, thanks. Same page, page 110, areas of work, the economic development team, etc. Just wondering, the discussions and focus groups and all of that, what findings come out of that and what did that lead to happening next? Yours? No.
That's it, thanks. Was that around the focus group that we held with the clients and the employers?
Yeah, just the general work on there, I just wondering what came out of that.
This family wellbeing part, sorry, section 4.2, is that what you're looking at?
4.2, yes,
yeah. That was an interesting session we ran. It was facilitated by the girl that was doing the work around from Wellbeing Alliance Scotland, and we had 6 employers and 6 of our clients from various programmes in a room up at Alloa Business Centre. And there was a good range. Ali was in attendance from Climate Manager Council, some smaller employers, third sector employers. Some of the findings were very simple, but what each group hadn't thought about. Our clients are applying for jobs. The employers are getting 40 applications for one admin job. They don't have time to respond to everybody, to give feedback to everyone on why they weren't considered. And our applicant, the clients were saying how important that was for them to get that feedback. So our employers were saying, oh, hadn't thought of that. We'll try and do that feedback now, even if it's a standard, at least they're getting something back to see why they've not been selected for interview. So there was a discussion around that. There was a discussion around making application processes more straightforward for people. A lot of organisations do it online and it's quite complicated and you're applying, but it's the same job application process for the chief exec as it is for the cleaner. So it's how do we make that more straightforward? Is there a hard copy choice for people to do that rather than an online system for job applications? And again, our job brokers are working closely with employers to try and make that process as accessible as possible for people.
On page 111 now, we're talking about, page 111, let's look at 4.7. Yeah, the Anchor Partnership, founded in January 2022, reconvened in April 23, doesn't sound as if it's doing very much somehow. I mean, are we getting any value for any resources that we're putting into that?
This is part of the Community Wealth Building Action Plan, was the Anchor Partnership with Climate Manager was to be formed. We have had a couple of meetings of it. There's good engagements to try and get some of our anchor private sector organisations on board with this, as well as some of the third sector and the bigger organisations, fire and police and council. There's been quite good engagement from an organisations keen to get on board with this. And there's been a lot of discussion around what the agenda should be. Should it be community wealth building actions that all the partners are doing to feed into the whole community wealth building for Clackmannanshire? So what we're doing next is we are commissioning Clay's to come up to Club Manager in January to do a session for the anchor partners, I think in the afternoon, and for senior officials in the council in the morning, to talk about the whole community wealth building agenda. How do we get on board with that? How should we set up the anchor partnership and take it forward? What the agenda should be? So there is some progress on that. I know it looks as if there's not very much happened, but there's various reasons. There's also been talk at the same time of whether we should have a regional anchor partnership across Falkirk and Stirling. So those discussions are also ongoing at the same time.
When do you think we might see some results from that then? Is it a year from now or longer than that?
Councillor, I don't mind coming in on this one. The anchor partnership is developing. I think we will start to see more developments happen over this next calendar year as that starts to progress and as we progress on the work around the community wealth building action plan in that sense. So whilst there is maybe it's a bit sluggish, I think there is a real commitment to progress this work and a genuine commitment from partners to progress the work genuinely around community wealth building as well within the locality.
Second page 4.9 talks about funding for 3 small CWB projects locally. Were they chosen as small projects deliberately, or they just happened to be small?
It was an application we made to the Transformation Fund, so there was a limited amount of funding available to deliver these, and we chose some projects that fitted with the Community Wealth Building Action Plan. So one of them is the work with CLES, that's part of the work that's been commissioned, and we hope to also commission a consultant to do some work around finding out about the use of credit unions in Club Manager, what's the take up at the moment, which credit unions are being used in the area, and what can we do to promote that work further. So that's the next piece of work we're going to be doing, but it was a small pot that we applied for and available. Thanks.
Yeah, in 4.4, we're talking about this post oversaw the delivery of 11 grant-funded third sector projects. What can you tell us about that? How that's gone? What results we've got?
So there's 2 things in there. The Child Poverty Coordinator post is ring-fence funding from Scottish Government, and we've just, I think, had a pretty much guarantee today that that will be continued for another year, which is good, and we've got someone in post for that. The grant programmes that we put out are part of the No One Left Behind funding, and they are managed by the Child Poverty Coordinator role. So we put those out in September, and I've got a little summary. We awarded 8 projects, and 5 have currently started. This report, refers to the previous year. The ones I've got the update are the ones that we've awarded this year, so I can send out information on the ones from last year or both, whichever. I'll give a quick update on this year. We've awarded 8 projects, 5 have started, and we're currently supporting 50 unemployed people or low-income parents. 32 of them are new to employability services. That includes, quite interestingly, a Green Skills programme, which has been delivered by Ceteris and Progressive Pathways, and that's introducing people, long-term unemployed and parents who are on low income, into the world of green skills. So they're going up to Aberdeen to go up a wind turbine. These people, there's 10 participants. And we've got some recruitment already, and it starts in January. So it's slightly different things we're trying to do with this funding. Quite interesting.
Yeah, find another one. Page 112. 4.16, funding allocation from UK Government. Just wondered how that had been spent and what results came from it.
Okay, there's a full annex on that, Councillor. Annex Appendix 2, UK Share Prosperity Fund, gives the budgets and how it's split across communities and place but business support and people and skills. And you can see what we've done last year and what the proposal for this year was.
That's fine, thanks, Scott. No, I think that's fine. Yep.
Excellent. Have any other questions? No. Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. I mean, this, like I said earlier, this paper is fantastic. I mean, I'm happy to move the paper. It's having the case study context just really brings it alive. It brings the figures to, you see all these dry figures and then you see the case study and it's just like, wow, you know, you can see the level of work that you're doing and the intense work that's in with individuals. So I found the report really interesting to read, and that makes our job as scrutinising reports much better because we can really see the life in it rather than just dry figures. So I very much appreciate the quality of this report, and thank you for bringing it to the committee, and I'm very happy to move it. And again, thanks to all the team for all the hard work that they do. Anyone second? Councillor Quinn?
Yeah, just also like to say, I absolutely agree with what you said there about the case studies. I thought that was fantastic. I think we need more case studies in the page generally, because yeah, it helped bring to life, you know, some of the figures into showing us how it's applied and how it makes a difference as well. So I really enjoyed that. I think the paper was really well written, and so I'm very happy to second the paper.
Up to debate. Councillor Hill?
No, sir.
No, fine. Nobody else? No. Okay. So we're all happy to accept the paper, note the paper? Yeah. Okay. Right, I think we'll have a 10-minute break. We're at that point. Comfort break and come back just round about 22.